Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Jennifer for the Median. We are in something unique today. The future is here. The future is now.
We are in Volkswagen's all-electric ID.4, and this is the first edition. Let's get through some of the details. So the ID.4 is built on Volkswagen's new modular electric drive matrix, MEB architecture, as opposed to MQB, which is the internal combustion engine variants. With the MEB architecture, Volkswagen's going back to its roots, the electric motors located in the rear, just like on the original Beetle.
There is an AC permanent magnet synchronous motor that puts out 201 horsepower and 229 pound-feet of torque. Obviously, because it's an electric vehicle, it's available instantly. The powertrain is pretty silent, so a synthetic sound is generated at speeds up to about 20 miles an hour, so pedestrians and cyclists can hear you. Right now, the ID.4 is only available with a single motor rear-wheel drive. However, later this year, Volkswagen will have a two-motor all-wheel drive variant as well. On the outside, the ID.4 has a sculpted front bumper with large matte black intake-like scoops. Those black plastic parts are actually functional for funneling air around the car. Not only are the door handles mounted flush to help with airflow, the wheels are designed to minimize drag. All in all, the design of the ID.4 has a drag coefficient of 0.28 on the rear-wheel drive model. All right, so this is the Volkswagen ID.4. The first edition, which sold out. You can get a Pro and a Pro S in the first edition, and the first edition sold out. And you would think electric cars super fast, right? Let's do a quick start here. Not that fast. I assume when Volkswagen has the two-motor ID.4, it will be faster. This one is just sort of there. So let's talk about the looks. I think that Volkswagen played it safe. It doesn't look too different than other mid-size or compact SUVs. And to me, it's a little disappointing that the front end is filled with air conditioning condensers and heating elements and all that sort of stuff, so you don't get a frunk. There are ways, obviously, you can package things like that. Well, they just put it all under the hood. It's streamlined, it's got a really good coefficient of drag, but they could have done so much more. There's a chance to really progress things forward with their first worldwide EV. On the inside, it's also not too different from other things. There's this 5.3-inch little display here in front of me, which is actually attached to the steering column so that when you do this, it moves with it, which is kind of nice, so the field of view is always right. And you get a 10 or 12-inch screen here, depending on which model you have, and it's a touch screen. The ID.4's electronic intelligence is based on a network architecture that Volkswagen designed from scratch for the MEB. There are two central computers that Volkswagen calls ICAS, the in-car application servers. The main strength of these servers and this network architecture is the ability to update the system in the future, so the ID.4 can be updated throughout your ownership experience. Everything is run through this big screen. Don't know that I like that. It's a little slow to react, and it's slow to start up sometimes. The driver information display here does give you the information you need. You can change the view a little bit depending on what you want, but not too much. So you always have your speedo, and you've got the lane keep assist and all those sort of functions on the left side, and you can make that bigger or smaller. There are some fun features like wireless charging for your phones and wireless CarPlay. There will be wireless Alexa later on this year, so you can do things with the ID.4 from home. And then there's something called Hey ID. I'm a little warm. Could you turn the temperature down to 70, please?
Search for points of interest in the vicinity.
We'll try that again. Hey ID,
Yes.
can you set the temperature of the cabin to 70 degrees?
This function is currently not available.
Wow. That did work before. Speaking of other things that don't always work in the ID.4, over on my left-hand side here, I have 2 window switches. There are 4 windows. Usually in the driver's seat, you get all 4 window switches. Technically, I have them. There's a little touch-sensitive button in front of my 2 window switches called rear. And sometimes when I tap it, it lights up. There we go. And then I can roll down the rear windows. If you don't touch it for a while, it will automatically default back to the front windows only. So that's interesting. But there are no real buttons in here. Volkswagen's Media Kit says there are a few real buttons, but there aren't. These little buttons right here, menu, Klima, which is climate, hazards, assist for all your driving assist things, and mode for driving modes, are all touch-sensitive, haptic-sensitive buttons that aren't actual mechanical buttons. Your light switches on the left side of the dash over here are all touch-sensitive, haptic buttons. The mirrors over here, the door lock and unlock, haptic, touch-sensitive buttons. To get the rear windows is a touch-sensitive button. The steering wheel are all haptic-sensitive, touch-sensitive buttons. So I guess the window switches would be the only real switches in here. Here's what upsets me. You've got sliders for temperature. You can turn the temperature down, which I'm doing right now, with this little slider right here. That's fine. That works okay. And you can do that from the main screen. You can just turn your temperature up and down, which is fine. But if you want climate control, you want to control the fan speed, you have to hit the Klima button. So there's 2 buttons to get to a fan speed, which then a 3rd button to actually turn up or down the fan speed. You're adding complexity where you're supposed to be adding simplicity. And if there's going to be a row of buttons here, why not just have the fan button here, or a slider for the fan instead of this big volume one? Why not put one more for that? Maybe you can just talk to the car and have it set the temperature, but I just tried that and it failed. So you're creating levels of complexity that don't need to be there. There are some fun, cool things in the ID.4. There's the ID light, for example. It's a light strip that runs along the base of the windscreen, and depending on what you're doing, like if you're in park and you shift to reverse, it does a shoots the light across. The HVAC is kind of cool. There's a smart climate thing. You've got clear view, warm feet, warm hands, cool feet, fresh air, quick cooling. And you can set these different things and it'll adjust things accordingly. Classic climate control, and then air care. Turn that on and it'll tell you how to manage the air in the vehicle. Heated steering wheel is standard on the ID.4. Heated seats are standard on the ID.4. So there are some clever bits in here and some not so clever bits. Let's talk about the biggest issue that I have with the ID.4, and that's ride. So the ID.4 does have dynamic drive control. There's a button here, well, a haptic sensitive button here called mode. And I'm in eco. You can go to comfort, sport, which firms everything up, and custom, where you can control and configure. And it's kind of cool because the screen will be different colors, like yellow for custom, red for sport, blue for comfort, and still blue for eco, which could have been green. I've left it in comfort most of the time that we've had this, which has been a week. And on a smooth surface, it rides just fine. As soon as you get to anything bumpy at all, it's like the suspension doesn't know what to do. It's rough riding, it doesn't have a well-controlled, well-damped ride. In comfort mode, in sport, it's worse. And you would think with an electric vehicle, the battery is down low, in between the axles, the weight is all down low. We're talking about a 4,500 to 4,600 pound vehicle here. It should be able to ride really smooth. And on smooth pavement, it does. On rough pavement, it absolutely does not, even in comfort. And that's really discouraging. So another quirk in the cabin is there's not like a traditional Prindle shifter. You've got this sort of rocker arm up here. And it's funny because when you get into an electric vehicle, you know, is it even on? And there is a start-stop button on the side of the steering column here, like in a traditional internal combustion engine vehicle, in a lot of Volkswagens. And you don't even really need to use it, because when you get in, if you put your foot on the brake and just put it in drive, it will turn itself on. When you get wherever you're going, if you hit P for park at the end of here and you get out, it's off. It turns off. So you really don't need the start-stop button, which is kind of funny. But this rocker arm, you roll it forward to go to neutral or drive, and backwards to go to reverse. But there's not only D, there's B. So there's drive and then brake. So if you put it in D for drive, that's just regular driving. And it will coast when you take your foot off the gas pedal, which, by the way, the gas pedal says play, the brakes pedal says pause. So if you're in drive, you can coast, and it won't do regenerative braking until you hit the brake pedal or the pause pedal. If you put it in B for brake, as soon as you take your foot off the gas pedal or the play pedal, it brakes, right? And it's regenerative braking right away, which is awesome because then you're charging the battery quite frequently, which you kind of want to do when that's all you have as a battery. So I've had it in B mode all the time. So that's really nice. You can do 1 foot. You really don't even need the brake pedal half the time. And speaking of brakes, the ID.4 has discs up front and drums in the rear, because apparently when you're doing regenerative braking, that's all the front disc brakes that it uses and not the rear brakes. So for brakes that are not used very often, drum brakes will work better. The biggest thing for me is charging. The standard battery pack is 82 kilowatt hours gross, with an EPA estimated range of about 250 miles on a single charge, when charged fully. So we had this car for 3 days, and when we got it, we had a 215 mile range. Now, Volkswagen claims 250. We've seen 258 on a full 100% charge. So that 250 is real world, but it was delivered to us at 215 miles range, is about 80% of battery power. And so we drove it around for several days, and with being in B, the brake mode, it stayed around 205, 210, because I was just doing all city driving. Then we went out in the country to kind of test this thing on some back roads. And driving out there, you're just on steady state cruise at 55 miles an hour and losing battery power. So we get out there, drive around a little bit, and then drive back, and we lost 40 miles of range. So I wanted to charge it, and I don't have a level 2 charger at my house. So if you plug this into a 120 volt outlet, it will charge about 2 to 3 miles per hour. If you put it in a level 2, it's like 20 to 30 miles per hour, or even better. So if you own one, definitely want to have a charger like that at home. And if that were the case, I wouldn't have any of this range anxiety. But we're based in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and there just aren't right now a lot of chargers that you can tootle around town and plug in your EV. But if I'm on a regular outlet, it's going to be days of charging to get it back to full charge. And until we have the infrastructure to support EVs, you know, I know in bigger cities there are charge points all over the place, but when you get into more rural America, there are not yet. Volkswagen does offer 3 years of free charging on Electrify America chargers if you buy an ID.4, so you do have that. But really, I can see this as an around town vehicle. The be-all end-all for me is I don't feel that the ID.4 in its current state is quite ready for prime time. The ride needs to be adjusted. That's the biggest thing. Some of the reactions for the screen need to be adjusted to happen faster. But with some tweaks, suspension, processing, maybe a way to charge a little faster, this this could be a really, really cool vehicle. But I would say if you're going to head down this EV path, why not make it look more futuristic? Why not make it look cool? And I know they're playing it safe to encourage people, well, here's something that looks like what you've had, and it just happens to be electric now. But why not clean sheet? Make it really, really interesting. A frunk where you can put stuff in addition to the load floor in the back. And there are clever things. It's a 2-level load floor. You can fold down the second row of seats. There's a tray that will match that, so you've got a flat load floor, and then you can actually lower that tray down, so you've got a little extra space. There's storage underneath that floor. So ID.4, it's really cool, not quite ready for prime time.